shall eat the fruit of their doings. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err.
All right, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We are continuing today in the book of Isaiah. More like that. Okay. And then verse 17 of chapter 51 is where we're at. We're going to read the whole chapter again to carry the context. Take a little drink of coffee here. Right. Hearken to me, ye that follow after righteousness, ye that seek the Lord. Look unto the rock whence ye are hewn, and to the hole of the pit whence ye are digged. Look unto Abraham your father, and unto Sarah that bare you. For I called him alone, and blessed him, and increased him. For the Lord shall comfort Zion, he will comfort all her waste places. And he will make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness shall be found therein, thanksgiving in the voice of melody. Hearken unto me, my people, and give ear unto me, O my nation. For a law shall proceed from me, and I will make my judgment to rest for a light of the people. My righteousness is near, my salvation is gone forth, and mine arms shall judge the people. The isles shall wait upon me, and on mine arm shall they trust. Lift up your eyes to the heavens, and look upon the earth beneath. For the heavens shall vanish away like smoke, and the earth shall wax old like a garment. And they that dwell therein shall die in like manner. But my salvation shall be forever, and my righteousness shall not be abolished. Hearken to me, ye that know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my law. Fear ye not the reproach of men, neither be ye afraid of their revilings. For the moth shall eat them up like a garment, and the worm shall eat them like wool. But my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in the ancient days, in the generations of old. Art thou not it that hath cut Rahab and wounded the dragon? There's just in passing, I don't usually like to interrupt, but remember chapter 27, where it talks about, in that day the Lord with his sword and grating by his sword will punish Leviathan, that fugitive serpent, that crooked serpent, even Leviathan, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. I think it's thought that that's the Assyrian in that context. But sometimes it is the great enemy is the dragon, of course, Satan. But also the lesser incarnations are representations of the dragon. I don't think I really talked about the dragon much. I might pick it up before we go on, after we finish reading. Art thou not it which hath dried the sea, the waters of the great deep, and hath made the depths of the sea a way for the ransom to pass over? Therefore the redeemed of the Lord shall return and come with singing to Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their head. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and mourning shall flee away. I, even I, am he that comforteth you. Who art thou that thou shouldest be afraid of a man that shall die, and of a son of man which shall be made as grass? And forgettest the Lord thy Maker, and hath stretched forth the that hath stretched forth the heavens, and laid the foundations of the earth, and hast feared continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor, as if he were ready to destroy. And where is the fury of the oppressor? The captive exile hasteneth that he may be loosed, and that he should not die in the pit, nor that his bread should fail. I think that word hasteneth should be thought of as worried. He's worried about it. He's thinking about, that's his concern. But I am the Lord thy God that divided the sea, whose waves roared. The Lord of hosts is his name. And I have put my words in thy mouth, and I have covered thee in the shadow of mine hand, that I may plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth, and say unto Zion, Thou art my people. Awake, awake, stand up, O Jerusalem, which hast drunk at the hand of the Lord the cup of his fury. Thou hast drunken the dregs of the cup of trembling, and wrung them out. There is none to guide her among all the sons whom she hath brought forth, neither is there any that taketh her by the hand of all those sons that she hath brought up. These two things are come unto thee. Who shall be sorry for thee? Desolation and destruction, and the famine, and the sword. By whom shall I comfort thee? Thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets. As a wild bull in a net. They are full of the fury of the Lord, the rebuke of thy God. Therefore hear now this, thou afflicted and drunken, but not with wine. Thus saith the Lord. I screwed that up. Thus saith thy Lord, the Lord. That's a very unusual phrase. And thy God that pleadeth, and thy God that pleadeth the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of thine hand the cup of trembling, even the dregs of the cup of my fury. Thou shalt no more drink it again, but I will put it into the hand of them that afflict thee, which have said to thy soul, Bow down that we may go over. And thou hast laid thy body to the ground, thy body as the ground and as the street to them that went over. And then the next chapter does call to Zion itself to put on beautiful garments and strength. All right, so shake thyself from the dust and arise. It's very much connected to this chapter because here they lay down on the ground. It's going to be important to remember that. And hopefully I can stitch that together all right. I mean, we probably could finish this chapter today and then continue into that. So we may read 52, and then we may get, I don't know, it's a weird thing sometimes, but we'll see. I want to comment further about the dragon. I didn't talk much when we just said the dragon in the sea. I was going along with the Egypt reference because it's on some level, of course, it's referring to Egypt. The idea of Leviathan and also that can refer to all those powers because the rivers like the Tigris and the Euphrates also likened to serpents. But of course, all those likening to serpents of enemies and such is just, as I was saying in the middle of it, it's all just pointing to the ultimate incarnation of the dragon, the serpent, the enemy, the great threat, which is Satan himself. Is the archetype of the enemy. In fact, the name Satan means enemy. So the enemy is Satan. And so when we have any kind of enemy, they're a likeness of Satan in a way, just the way a Christian is a likeness of Christ. The enemies of the gospel are likenesses of Satan. That's why Jesus would talk to the Jews as the sons of Satan, because they were spiritually in line with the devil. And it's a spiritual seed. As I explained about the seeds and the serpent seed and the children of the devil in a teaching I did called the serpent seed. It's available on my website. That I show up to every time at the beginning of the study, of course. I'll just use, but on the internet itself, it's a worthy study to point out on my studies page on oraclesofgod.org. You can always ignore the security warnings. It's just because I don't want to buy a SSL certificate. I don't see why I need one. It's weird that they say it's not secure. They should only put those warnings up when you start asking for information. I'm just giving things. I suppose I don't know. They could scan it for viruses. I got to pay for that, I guess. For me to prove. I've had a website for longer than many people have been alive. 23 years. I guess it was 90. Well, that started in 98. Yeah, I started it back when I lived in the Chicago area. So yeah, I probably went online in 99. Oh, I'm thinking. But anyways, so like 22 years, something over 20 years. Right? The seed of the serpent here, number 3, is a 2-hour study. Does the devil have children in this world? What's the biblical teaching? Because some people get into this carnal teaching of the serpent seed, where they say that he has a literal children, and it's the Jews, of course, because it always becomes the Jews eventually in some argument. Always beware of those. Boast not against the branches. That people. It's like I don't like people who notice, like they're focused on the fact they're getting ahead. There's like an envy component. The things that they're said. It's like, when it says this. Here's the thing. You notice what it says about Zion here in this chapter. He tells he says, comfort my people, right? He's saying that's the message from the beginning from back when we started in this section, right? Comfort my people. And there's a lot of comfort and almost exaltation involved in a lot of this, what we've been reading, because of the victory that God has promised and has given and will give. From God's perspective, the time is a little bit confused. Meaning, time is different. And it's hard for me to say how, because for us, time is linear. We just keep going forward in time. For God, time could be like, try to think about it as multi-dimensional. Imagine what a 3-dimensional time looks like. What would it be like to experience 3-dimensional time? Is it even such a thing? Well, I don't know. But if I can conceptualize sort of like 2-dimensional time, so that means at any given point in time, you'd have an infinite amount of time in another direction. I remember hearing about stuff like that and being like, okay. It's awfully specific. The secrets of the universe are something that I don't know. It's like God will have to show us that. If he reveals it to us in the world through, and we can discover it, then we'll find out. But anything that's of God's realm beyond is speculation. So when he says here, like, the serpent, the devil, wounded the dragon, that also made me, I wanted to mention in the process of going through, even though we're picking it up basically at verse 17, wounding the dragon, that made me think of the deadly wound of Revelation. The dragon has this deadly wound that's healed. And there's always a lot of speculation about, I myself have speculative thoughts about what does that signify? Is that something prophetic we can look for? Is that something that will clue us in? I think the dragon or the beast has to appear first. Until you clearly know you're seeing it. Until you know you're seeing the beast, you won't know it's wounded. But it might, like for example, if in this current time, this attempt to get in some countries they've already installed these passes, the vaccine passports and stuff. If that rising thing, they want to make it a worldwide thing. They call it the Great Reset and all that, right? I always thought that they would attempt. I always thought the deadly wound signified. I haven't always thought, but for a long time I've had one thought about it, among others. Let me put it that way, because I'm not trying to make this a dogmatic thing. That the beast system, if it's a system, if it's a government, as it rises, it would fail, and it's maybe the people would rise up against it or whatever, but it would stop. It would not be successful. It would start to come into being. The beast would begin to rise, and take shape. So if the whole world started really doing this Green Pass thing in a more concerted effort, and it started congealing into a singular entity or something. I mean, there's already a lot of single entities, but if you could start to really see the whole, I mean, and then it collapses. I mean, where you're starting to, I mean, because like, I don't know, because I don't think this is getting far enough for me to believe it's actually the beast. Not at this point, But it is beast-like. It's acting like the beast, right? Doing stuff that it's like the market. I just keep thinking these people, they keep wearing the masks and stuff, and it's like signifying, okay, we're ready for the next step. Because that's all it is like they're just waiting for the green passes. Because what else? What we've got vaccines, we've got everything. It's not even deadly to most people, especially children, but we're still pretending like it is. And as long as people, if we don't put a stop to it now, they will go another step. And then you'll think like, well, maybe if we go with this, we can just, and then there'll be the next thing. You can't, give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And the people are just, the common people think are just, I know a lot of them don't even agree with it, but they're just letting it happen. So if it's going to be stopped, it has to be stopped with a little more concerted effort. I think ultimately, if this is the beast, it will be stopped. That's the deadly wound, I think. And then it'll come back even worse. So don't get too excited. And I think it comes back, the deadly wound being healed, well, that would be something perhaps that... And how does the beast get wounded? Well, I would think it's if it's God's arm that wounds it, then it's God's people who stand up against it, because we won't take that lion down. Though I don't see a lot of stand-upping people, We live in a kind of a cowardly generation. They're accustomed to comfort. And what do we expect? This isn't the great America of old. We watched it fall apart around us. Whenever things get too big and great and wonderful for their own good, they start to fall apart. Empires always, it doesn't mean that, there'll still be in America, but as far as the empire, it's hard to maintain that righteously. I mean, we get in all kinds of trouble with fighting with other people, and we're in their countries, and other people are pointing guns at us because they want us out of their region, and they want to control their region. It's like, and it would be better for the people of that region if they didn't. But then again, it's probably also better for the people of that region that we don't fight over it. I don't know, the affairs of men, that kind of thing, I don't know exactly. You're just kind of caught in whatever there is. Okay, so now it talks about stand up Jerusalem, which has drunk at the hand of the Lord of the cup of his fury. And I found this really interesting because it reminds me of Revelation, but also there's this, as we read it, he starts off describing this having drunk of the cup. Jerusalem she's experienced the wrath of God, the city. And he's given and he speaks to it, though as if it's an individual. Of course, it's all these people that experienced it. And she is drunk in the dregs and all this, and there was no one that helped her. The sons. Remember, he talked about in the other chapter how you're going to be like, where'd these sons come from? But here are these, like, the ones you raised, they left you. None of the sons you raised up, they all just kind of deserted you. And then all these bad things happened. But then he comes and he redeems her. And as I think about that, it goes to that dual nature thing again. Zion, put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. On the one hand, there's the holy city. There's a two-city thing, And that it doesn't, the theme exists in the Bible. It's not going to be spelled out for you like that. But like there's a good example of how he switches. It's like the two natures of men. The sinful nature. Is there another nature? Well, anyways, but the nature of man is a sinner. Men are sinful. And we are all prone to being faithless. On some level, there is a necessity, where it says like her utter failure. Who's even going to be sorry for you? All these things they brought on themselves, and now your sons have fainted. I mean, these are the people, your children. The children of the city are the men and the women and the inhabitants thereof. They fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets as a wild bull in the net. They are full of the fear of the Lord, the rebuke of thy God. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know exactly if that refers to bodies piled up at the ends of the streets, like a wild bull in a net. Like the way the big lump of humanity. They're full of the fear of the Lord, the rebuke of thy God. But it's also sort of giving it in the sense of a drunkenness. So it could be like people drunken in the streets. But it also may refer to their bodies lying in the streets dead, but being in a figure represented as, like drunken men. Full of the fear of the Lord, like a wild bull in the net. That bull would be exhausted, not struggling anymore, but like caught, done. I think that's, because the context is they've fainted. They're laying in the street like a wild bull in a net. So that must mean a wild bull, once you get him netted. I've never netted a wild bull, but I bet after you get done with him and you've got him in the net, he lays there pretty still because they stop struggling at some point, because it just makes things worse. And when it says they are full of the fear of the Lord, you're not like, no, they've had enough, is what it means. They're full. They're full. Like, it means exhausted, like someone who's full of wine. The rebuke of God has exhausted and made them prone now. They lay down. There's another laying down that comes near the end of the chapter too, right? We've drunk to the hand of the cup of the Lord of his fury. The cup, in the book of Revelation, there's the cup also. She has a cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So that golden cup in her hand represents that which brings the wrath of God on the world. It is the elements of wrath. It's because of her fornication that the wrath of God is coming upon her, because she's a fornicator in the book of Revelation, the great whore. And she is a form of Jerusalem. She's the corrupt Jerusalem, the one we're here. And we're all, and in a sense, we're all corrupt individuals, like Jerusalem, that can be redeemed. But on some level, there's a sorting. The sorting is when God judges, When God judges, things get sorted out. Men die, men survive. The word of the Lord goes on forever, and the salvation of God does not cease. But men do, and the heavens will. There is none to guide her among all the sons whom she hath brought forth. Neither is there any that taketh her by the hand of all the sons she brought up. I kind of commented on that a bit. But she's drunken. The dregs of the cup, man. She's gone down to the bottom, wrung them out. I think that's just their way of saying, like, she is loaded. Loaded. And there's no one, she's loaded. She's been drinking of the wine of the wrath of God. There's a double sort of thing going on there, where on one hand, the idea of being drunken is like, the inebriated state that one goes into. It's almost like she's been beat up. But on the other hand, a lot of times the drunkenness refers to the insensitivity of the sinner to their situation. Meaning they've sinned against God, and God's wrath is hanging over them. I've done things that God does not please. He's not pleased for me to do. And if I'm not mindful of that, if I'm not a believer, right, and I'm not mindful of that, the cup is waiting for me to drink. On one hand, I'm drinking it because if I'm participating in sinful activities over and over again, like even things, criminal activities like stealing. It's like when you become accustomed to living a certain way, it's the criminal activity is addictive. Because once you get away with, once you get away with things, stealing and such, or just addictive things like substances. Those are easy. We can talk about substances. It's not easy to get away from. And it's not easy to judge things properly. The drunkenness is not with wine, it is with God's fury. In some ways, they become insensitive to the fear of God because they don't want to consider it. People don't want to consider that what the impact, the ramifications of their doings. They choose rather to believe that God is not, either doesn't exist or is just not interested. I wouldn't call it exactly interest, but there are consequences. She had brought forth sons, there's none to guide her. She's drunk. The portrayal is of her as drunken and reeling, and having drunk the dregs of the cup of trembling. The cup of trembling is that it is the most fearsome kind of wrath and cup you could drink. Like it makes you tremble. These two things are coming to thee, and who shall be sorry for thee? Desolation and destruction, the famine and the sword. By whom shall I comfort you? All these things. That's what came on Jerusalem. That is the wrath of God on sin. If we don't turn to Him, if we haven't turned to Him, then His wrath abides upon us. He said, I am He that comforts thee. It's like, but, she looked to her sons, quote unquote, to the men whom she raised up. The men created by this society. Like, what do you expect of men raised by this society? It's a wicked generation. So we're going to have a lot of wickedness in our generation. It's going to be hard to fight a righteous battle with such people. Not that there aren't righteous among them, but it's like the numbers are fewer than there ought to be. Than you'd like there to be, let's say that. Like they say, these things that would have been absurd 10 years ago now are common. So we'll see how that goes. By whom shall I comfort thee? Desolation, destruction, famine, sword. I could point out things like, the famine of the end times is the famine of the hearing of the word of God. That famine, I don't know. I don't know what people are hearing. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't ask very often. It's hard to tell. When you look out at the world, there's two ways you look out these days. You don't just look out at your neighbors and stuff like people used to. Friends, neighbors, and see what's going on. You now can look at a wider world. But, we've been able to look at a wider world for several generations now through radio and television. And that wider world was somewhat controlled for a long time. And it still is, to a great degree, especially the major outlets. And they would like to control everything. Now that they've lost control, you can tell that there are people who want to put things under control. They want to control what people say or can say. And it's certainly the things in the Bible. It's like, you can't say these are things people don't want to be said. It's like, this is religion. This has been around a long time. You can't will you censor it? I wonder. Maybe not this specifically, but there are plenty. There are plenty of things in the Bible that people would absolutely flip their lids over these days. Some of these hypersensitive types, because they don't appreciate what it represents, and they have only this myopic view of their life and their identity in this tiny little their own world that they're living in. I forgot about that. There's that world. There's your self world. There's your perceptions and all that. But as you look out, it's hard to tell what's really going on until you see, when you hear things. But it's hard in real time to know. And sometimes you hear good things, you hear bad. I don't know what people are thinking. I used to be more quick to jump in there and say they're people are like this, and it's like, yeah, they are. They're like that, but there are also other ways too. You know, I still believe there are a lot of faithful out there who are willing to stand up for what's right. Certainly, I believe there's still enough. Though in some places, apparently, there are not. I heard that in Lithuania, they have an extremely strict system of these passes they implemented really quickly. And people who are not part of it are left in the margins of society. Interesting, you know. All you need is the number of the beast. You can get away with it. Because I don't know. I don't know that it is. Like, to me, I don't think like your little phone code or whatever is a mark of the beast, but it sure is like the mark of the beast. Why do you want to do something that's so much like the mark of the beast? Like, one of the things that's like an evil spoken of in the book of Revelation. Why do men want to do that which the Revelation warns about? That's what I want to know. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's not technically the actual mark of the beast, but that it is like it is significant. You know? You can't ignore that, because that tells you what it is. It's evil. You know it's evil. It's, you know, because that's what those things are. Kind of making people take things, marks, whatever, codes, numbers that are the key to buying and selling and entering into transactions and such. Come on. You know, I can't imagine how any Western society would allow such. Well, you know, like the French seem to fight against it really hard. I don't know what's with the Lithuanians. Maybe it's because it's a small country and there's like way too much internationalist. You know, maybe they got picked on by the New World Order or something. I mean, like literally, I was thinking I'm like, yeah, maybe a guy with lots of money, billions, could practically buy a country like Lithuania. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's funny because my family comes from there. We aren't Lithuanian, though. Not that I know of. I never, you know, they were Germans or whatever. I don't know. I think that some of them were and some of them weren't. It's, you know, they have such weird. Some people don't honestly want to know where their ancestry is, and I'm not a big. I mean, I don't put a lot of stock in it, but it's interesting. But some people seem to have like a, you know, they want to be of a particular. I've noticed this with certain people, like they don't, you know, they insist that they're 100% Spanish or something like that. Well, it's like, you know, they're probably part native, because that's just what that is. That's, you know, they don't look 100% Spanish. Like Spaniard Spanish, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? But it's like, I mean, I don't over-identify with my ancestors, you know, because sometimes people do that. It's to me, it's an interesting thing. I don't think anyone should get too caught up in it, because we have to live our own lives, and we're certainly not going to ride on our, you know, our 5 generations ago grandfather's reputation, and certainly it won't help us in this world or you know, with the Lord. The sons of Famine, they lie at the head of the street, and the bull and the nut, they're full of fear of the Lord. We covered that. Hear now this, thou afflicted and drunken, but not with wine. Again, the Lord has poured upon you the spirit of deep sleep, it said in chapter 28. You know, They are drunken but not with wine. They stagger but not with strong drink. That's 29, sorry. Also in 28, they refer to the drunkards of Ephraim, on the head of the fat valley, and all the things that would come upon them for their foolishness. And this is the consequence. They're all at the head. To me, this is I see a city of slain people. As far as that's why I feel like being portrayed. They're saying now, hear this though, right? This is what God says: the God that pleadeth thy Lord, the Lord. The reason notice even in the just regular print, the Lord there is Yahweh or Yahweh or Yahovah or whatever, however you want to mispronounce it. Thy Lord is probably like thy. I don't know what thy Lord is. We could find out. It'd be in my reference Bible, but I don't use that anymore. So, I mean, I could, but it would be weird online. I have to do something that you can look at. It makes more sense to me. Like this. Me paging through a paper book in front of you would have to be a really bad idea for an interesting Bible study. Okay. 22. What? Was it 21? Oh, no, there it is. Thy Lord. It throws me off because the two lords almost... Yeah, it's Adon, which is like Adonai. El Shaddai, Elyon, and Adonai. But here it's just Adon, which is a shortened form of it. Lord. Right, I don't know if this... there we go. Adon. It's a shortened form of Adonai. It doesn't say that. This is actually the root of Adonai. Okay, this is the word that Adonai comes from. And it's a good number of times. 325 occurrences. Like my master. Yeah, very simple. So, I don't know. Maybe thy master, the Lord, would work a little better. Thy Lord, the Lord is a little awkward. But it's because they chose to translate Yahweh in the original Hebrew into the Lord. They didn't transliterate the name. And that's just how they chose to do it. And, and to this day, generally, that's how it's done. The Jehovah's Witnesses translate it Jehovah all the time. And that's how they get their, but theirs is like, it's funny because they insist on calling him Jehovah, but they definitely have branded themselves the Jehovahs because it's like they're the ones who are always talking about Jehovah in their own particular, mispronunciation or misunderstanding of the name of the Old Testament. But actually it's Adonai from which we get those vowel sounds for Jehovah. Jehovah is made by taking the vowels from Adonai and putting them into Yahweh to change to Yahovah, and then they translated the YJ as it often is done, because it's Yeshua, not Jesus in Hebrew, but in the Greek it's Isus, and that's from which we derive Jesus on our side, and it's fine, it works. The cool part is God is he understands people in different lands speak different tongues. He showed that on Pentecost Day. And so we call him by the name of Jesus. When I called on the name of Jesus, the Holy Spirit responded with power. So I know that the name of Jesus is good enough. You don't have to get it exactly right. I know that for certain. That's why people are like, people who get on me about that. And believe it or not, there are people who are very sensitive about saying God's name right. Like that, if you don't say it right, like some sort of magical spell, he won't hear you. If you can't say Yahweh or something, get it exact. If that's exactly how it's said, is that? I don't know, but or Yeshua, with the proper accent, you gotta say it right, and then it's like the stars swirl, I guess, and the mystical dust flies up and God appears or something. I don't know what exactly. And suddenly now your prayers are heard. I wonder if his prayers are answered at the same rate mine are. I'd be curious about that. And that's not a fair assessment anyways, because it all depends on what you're praying for, My prayers, I do have a very high answer rate, but, I don't get it out of my space. I don't start asking for weird stuff. Not since I was a kid, The dregs of the cup of my faith. I've taken it. You're not going to drink it again. Now, I can't say historically for Jerusalem, that's not the case. But as he's restoring his people, and, it is the case, you're done. I give you restoration. And there is an end to wrath. The wrath of God does come to an end. When Jesus finally sets foot on the Mount of Olives, and the mountain is cleaved in two, and he returns and he destroys his enemies, there will be peace in Jerusalem. But, there's going to be issues ongoing, though. Though they had peace for a season, in their time. Those who survived the captivities. Those who were of the generation that saw Jerusalem destroyed and saw the many of the inhabitants thereof either killed or carried into captivity. But some would return. And he's saying, I'm going to put that cup of fury, representing the both, in some ways, the sin and the consequences. Because like I said, in the book of Revelation, the cup is full of the wine of her fornication, and she's drinking it, and it also represents God's wrath. Double unto her double. From the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. The wrath of God is poured into the cup, but also she's drinking it. I guess it's sort of like there's a thing about the madness of all that. Like the insanity of drinking alcohol sometimes. Because it harms you, and afterwards you're always like, especially if you drink a lot. But there's a tendency to kind of push a lot sometimes. Well, certainly I've certainly been places where they were encouraging you to drink more and more and more. You know what I mean? And but as you drink, you become less and less. You become a poorer and poorer judge. And the consequences of what you're doing later on are more likely to be very negative. You might wake up with a whopper of a headache, or or whatever. Or even if it say, well, hey, I take there's a cure, there are actually cures for it and all that right now. Or you can either take to prevent a hangover or to fix one, at least within a reasonable amount of time. Prevention is, I think, the preferred way, I think, because otherwise, you might as well just be taking aspirin, I guess. There's ways to prevent it, but you can't stop the long-term consequences. I'll prevent hangovers. Oh, okay. That was one of the warning systems telling you you're doing too much. So you drink too much, and now you don't have hangovers because you're avoiding them. But it's allowing you to destroy your health more quickly because you're not having to deal with the negative consequences. You're actually storing up worse for yourself later. Potentially liver failure, all those things. That's not good. The same thing with the wrath of God. It's like we can... People do stuff to provoke it, and they become more reckless in their heart, not caring. Oh, I've done all these things. There's never been any consequences. I've always flaunted God's will, avoided, God. I think nothing of those things. God. I will put it into the hand of them that afflict thee, which have said to thy soul, bow down that we may go over. And thou hast laid thy body to the ground, and as a street to them that went over. So the cup is taken from the hand of her and put into the hand of those that afflict her. You must drink of this cup, of the fury of the Lord. Because they also have been doing things to store up wrath against the day of wrath. Yeah. And the Lord often does that. He will use the enemy to chastise people or to test his people or whatever, but he will use the enemy for whatever purpose. And then when it's done, he'll turn on the enemy and punish them because they liked to do it, because that is because they are sinners. And it seems like, well, how can he use the sinner? It's like, well, he's God. He uses them, of course, because that's their nature. He doesn't make them into, like I said, Satan does what Satan does because that is his nature. He is a corrupt angel. What would you expect? People confuse the idea of God corrupting something, which he never does. God doesn't corrupt things. He doesn't take good things and make them corrupt. God forbid. But he allows the existence of corrupt things, such as us. He didn't take like some angelic form of me and turn me into a corrupt person. I was conceived in sin. I was corrupt from the womb. I was going astray from my youth. That's me. God didn't force me to be that way. If he'd created a perfect, that would be somebody else. I'm the imperfect version. You know what I mean? So I have an interest in that imperfect version. That's why I don't say to God, what are you doing? I don't look to the potter and say, like, hey, you don't know what you're doing. Why'd you make me this way? It's a very strong indictment of yourself when you start questioning, saying, well, why didn't God make me like this? That's somebody else, dude. That's not you. You only get one you. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? That's all you got. And you don't even really have it, And your patience possess you your souls, but God has said, all the souls are mine. He is authorized to judge all. Now, it says here, which said to your soul, bow down that we may go over. And this is, and thou hast laid thy body as the ground, and as a street to them that went over. You just laid down. That's pretty bad. She just laid down with her body as if she was the ground herself, and as the street. They say, get thee in the dust. On your belly you shall go, and dust shalt thou eat. All that, what he said to the serpent. That is getting down in the dust is just a way of saying utter humiliation and utter subjection. And that was not how it was supposed to be. I guess we'll read the next chapter at least, right? That's not how it's supposed to be. Jerusalem is supposed to be the city of the Lord, the holy city. It's not going to take it away from them. I'm going to take it away from you and give it to them. I don't think that's the same with Babylon. That's for his people. That's for the Jews and also for those who turn to the Lord. It's like there is this metaphor of the of the sort of the woman that's gone astray. Ezekiel goes into great detail about this, talking about Jerusalem being like, I found you and you were unwashed, and this sort of uncleanness of her birth and all that. It goes through this a whole analogy of the bride and all that, but also there's like, I made you my bride, and then you went and played the whore. That's how it's portrayed. And then he asks, and also, shall I take you? So he goes through a lot of interesting questions, like, should I take you back again? It's pretty demeaning to take someone back again after they've played on you, depending on how they played. And whether they're going to play again. But God, he's looking at the people as a whole, but he also ultimately will judge us as individuals. So the commentary is on everyone. So in a sense, like, yes, the city at one point is like the holy city, but it's also this defiled, filthy city with the cup of trembling in one hand, waiting or in this case, she has drunk all the way down to the bottom, that cup of the wrath that God had prepared for her. And now, awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion. Put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. For henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Shake thyself from the dust, arise and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose thyself from the bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion. For thus saith the Lord, ye have sold yourselves for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. For thus saith the Lord God, my people went down aforetime into Egypt to sojourn there, and the Assyrian oppressed them without cause. Now therefore, what have I here, saith the Lord, that my people is taken away for naught? They that rule over them make them to howl, saith the Lord, and my name continually every day is blasphemed. Therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore they shall know in that day that I am he that doth speak. Behold, it is I. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, thy God reigneth. Thy watchmen shall lift up the voice. With the voice together shall they sing. For they shall see eye to eye when the Lord shall bring again Zion. Break forth into joy, sing together, ye waste places of Jerusalem. For the Lord hath comforted his people, he hath redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord hath made bare his holy arm in the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. Depart ye, go out from thence, touch no unclean thing. Go ye out of the midst of her, be ye clean that bear the vessels of the Lord. For ye shall not go out with haste, nor go by flight, for the Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your reward. It's actually more like reward. It means rear guard. It doesn't mean reward again. And actually, that's where I think the chapter should end, actually. I think chapter 53 should begin with, Behold my servant. Because, in fact, my song for Isaiah 53 begins at 52:12. It's through 53:12. Or 52:13 through 53:12. I don't actually have the 53 text here, but that's a very critical text. But I don't want to go into that just now. But well, you know what? We're going to read this whole chapter again tomorrow. We will not get through all this today, of course. So I'm not even going to read the part about this. Like, we'll read that when it's more in context with what we're doing, because that does segue into the next part where it talks about the suffering servant of the Lord, bearing the griefs of the people of God. And again, there is something with the city. Remember, the city in the book of Revelation is Babylon. But On her forehead is a mysterious name written, Babylon, the mother of harlots. She's the mother of harlots. She's called Babylon. It's spiritual Babylon. But she's, in a sense, it is Jerusalem, but only because it shares the same geography. You know what I mean? Meaning that the place can become corrupted. I mean, even the temple itself was defiled and God destroyed it at the hand of the Babylonians. The city is not what's sacred, but it's the people, the sanctified people of God that sanctify the city, his holy city. Put on thy beautiful garments. The city can look beautiful, can be made beautiful. You notice, to her was given that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, it says in the book of Revelation. For the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. When the city is filled with the righteous, this is a spiritual city. We are the city. We are now, but it is scattered. The Lord will gather it. He will gather his people together and bring together again the captive of Jerusalem. You know what I mean? The circumcision that we believe in as Christian is not of the flesh, but of the heart. And the uncleanness also. I mean, obviously, since what we'd be looking at is after the return of Christ, I don't think we're going to worry about unclean things and as far as we go, because we will be in the glorified body, which should make, I think the glorified body, we're supposed to, we know that we believe that we will be sinless in that state. But I've also talked about how, like, on some level, it says like that, like the whole wedding garments parable. Like, why would Jesus give these warnings if they weren't something we should take heed to? Like the man who went to the wedding without a wedding garment, and he was speechless, and he was thrown out into outer darkness with weeping and gnashing of teeth. Obviously using that same refrain, so we know it's not good. This is a final judgment level of screw up. Showing up in heaven, so to speak, at God's throne, not having on the wedding garment. Like you weren't, you just thought you just walking off the street. You didn't get ready at all. You're not ready at all? You didn't get the wedding garment? And it's like, because people, and it comes from righteousness, right? And the righteousness, a lot of times we think about in terms of actions and acts we could do that were righteous and that would make us righteous. Be like, go help a old lady, or go adopt some children, orphans, do some good around, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit those in prison. Those are good things to do and righteous things to do, but that's not what really makes the righteous garments. Now, in a sense, if we see those things, if we have opportunity to do those things, and we don't do that, that's unrighteous. You know what I mean? Not everyone has opportunity. People are, a lot of times, there's not, I have enough, I have my hands full raising my own family. I don't give much to charity, and if I had sufficient to do so, then I would be obligated to. On some level, I'd be responsible, at least on some level, of what I do with that money, that excess, that it should go to good things, But I mean, but raising your family is a good thing, and so, that of course is a necessity. We have to take care of our responsibilities. Well, the righteous thing we do, most of all, is it is centered around our response to the gospel. It is that response that really is the righteous thing. That, like our faith in God, being genuine, being sincere, and being awake, I guess is what I want to say. Like to actually be cognizant of the facts of that we have taken on by saying, I believe in Jesus. The ramifications of such a commitment. Like to be sincerely faithful in that and to that, to believe in that and all that. That is the essence of our righteousness. You know what I mean? And because all other righteousness will flow from that faithful commitment being genuine. You know what I mean? Like if we have a genuine commitment to God through faith, we put our faith in Jesus, he imputes to us righteousness from sin and all that. But the part that is our garment that we put on is the continuance of that faith. Is that the faith we have verbally, outwardly spoken of is a reality within us, and therefore grows into things that faith naturally produces. You know, faith produces an effect on someone. And that, as long as that's going on, you're fine. You know, you are taking the covenant seriously. Because that's all, but I see mostly when I look at the parables of Jesus, the things that are most, it's people who are just like blow it off. You know, and that can be a problem. You shouldn't just blow it off. You should take it seriously. God is serious. Your sin is a serious matter. He is delighted to forgive you, but it requires that we, being forgiven, don't just go back to the same old ways, but that rather we would seriously look at what God wants from us. And he's called us to righteousness. You know, and he doesn't require that we actually be righteous in every way, but that we would be righteous in this way, in that our faith towards him, that we would put our faith in him, period. And if we do, genuinely, I have to throw that in because I think there's some people confuse a declaration of faith, or and they'll say, repeat these words after me. Now you're a Christian. Now you're saved. And they'll usually add thing, if you meant it with all your heart. But it's like, I really feel like people don't get it somehow. Or maybe at the time they do. I don't know. What do I know about what people think, right? I guess because we all know that there's a certain level of Christianity which is very nominal, right? We need to be circumcised in our hearts. What that means is actually having a change of heart. Having those things, in my heart ends up reoriented into the things that it cares about. And the unclean, out of the, when Jesus talked about the unclean, he talked about the heart again. He says, out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, communicate, all the things that lead to fornication, adultery, lying, starts in the heart. And that's what defiles you. It's not the things you eat. He was making a point that eating food doesn't defile you. He was paving the way for the Gentiles to be received. Because there was this interesting interplay with Jesus when he would meet with Gentiles. He would be very verbally, he was like, it's not fit to give the children's meat to dogs. To one Gentile is what he said. But he did heal her anyways. And say, great is your faith. He would challenge them verbally. When all along his intention toward them is benevolent. And it's interesting because, like I said, people who say, oh, Jesus would never speak sarcastically. I don't know. When he was calling that woman a dog, do you think he meant it like firmly? Or was he just answering her the way she would expect a Jew to answer? I don't know. But I think it's worth thinking about. I put both considerations in there. I don't try to assume I know what everything that's going on means. Some things seem obvious, but I try not to assume everything. I mean? It's something that, and here's the thing, it's something that actually the first year I studied the Bible, people were amazed at how much I knew. After studying the Bible just like 6 months, other kids were like, wow, you know so much about the Bible. But it's just that beginner sort of thing where it's like, you have a lot of confidence and you have a lot of, you think you know what you're talking about. And it's very common that when you start off and you start to become proficient at something, you get overconfident almost immediately because you're grasping subjects, and plus you're just being handed stuff often because you're learning from somebody else usually. Because I learning on my own at first I couldn't do it, so I studied along through the Bible basically with Arnold Murray, and then I studied on my own after that because I needed some sort of guiding through it, even if mostly just to understand what's going on, get some broader context, flesh it out. But in the end, a lot of that stuff, the things you find over time make it harder for me to say it. Like I said, just when Jesus says a particular thing just to that woman, I'm not exactly sure exactly how he meant it. You know what I mean? And that's all right. And it's good to be mindful of that. God is in heaven and we upon earth, therefore let our words be few, as it says in Ecclesiastes. And there's a certain, and I talk quite a bit, but the point is, I talk quite a bit, but I'm careful about what I say. And that's the thing, is we should choose our words carefully. Or at least try, or be mindful when we haven't chosen them carefully, and then go back and look at it. Because the thing is, we can always re-examine. God knows our frame. He knows our weaknesses. Hearts uncircumcised. And, I'm saying that because that's the Christian perspective. Also, Jerusalem will be trodden down of the Gentiles till the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That's one of the things Jesus said about Jerusalem. And it's still, they've got their Dome of the Rock, which is a Gentile mosque, whatever, that's built on the Temple Mount. And so if that isn't being trodden down on the Gentiles, it's still being trodden down on the Gentiles. Still occupied. Even though they own it, it's still not quite theirs. They can't do whatever they want. There's some who would love to just go in and bulldoze that mosque, It is kind of like, it's something that they do. It's like they go and they build their structures on top of whatever anyone else's holy structure is. They did that in India. They would demolish temples that were built to the Hindu gods and then build mosques on top of them, And it's sort of a cultural humiliation. It's kind of, we put our churches all over America, but I don't think we I remember someone talking about Mount Rushmore and how these hills are sacred, and it's like, and then we carve our presidents' faces on them. I can see why some people might be offended at that. Absolutely. But at some point, history has already happened, and I don't know what now. So I'm not interested in turning back the clock now, and no one should be, because if you turn back the clock too far, pretty soon, and change things, the world may be different, but you won't be in it. Because if the world didn't go the way it was, we're all, we're in some way we're all the children of Hitler. If he hadn't done that war, and that we're all affected by, not all, but very many of us, the world events change things, move people around. Cause people to get married that wouldn't have gotten married, cause people to be dead so they're not in the way. All those people, you don't just erase that many lives and not affect the world. And it's true of the wars that came before it also, to some degree. Obviously, as things got smaller and more isolated, but world wars were earth-shaping events. So how far back in time do you want to go? The farther back you go, the bigger the effect. We'll turn Columbus back, prevent him from nobody would ever figure it out. As if not Columbus, then somebody else. You have sold yourself, so shake thyself in the dust, arise, sit down. Oh, we're 8 minutes over. Okay, never mind. So we're going to pick it up with this. It was good we covered it a bit going in, because like I said, it is connected to the last chapter, but we'll pick it up with verse 1 here next time. Thanks for joining this study. Look forward to being back Monday. All right.
Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of be given him. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women